Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video of Fox Reacts. Today we're checking out a brand new one from Game Theory, and it's another FNAF theory. The final security breach mystery. Let's hop in.
And at this point, we've solved every lingering
Wow.
mystery from Security Breach. We looked at this thing from top to bottom. Glamrock Freddy, Golden Freddy, the missing Bonnie, the infuriating Patient 46. We connected every detail. We called every child a robot. And that's where I was happy to leave it. FNAF dead and buried once more. Except for that time I talked about the potential real-life ARG, but we're just gonna ignore that ever happened. But now, it's reborn yet again, risen from the ashes. With the drop of a brand new DLC teaser a month ago, and the start of a brand new book series literally this week, FNAF is back. Which means it's time I dive back in and cover the one thing that I was too scared to talk about when I was doing theories earlier this year. It's the one topic that very few have spoken about because it's just so darn confusing. I appreciate that probably doesn't narrow it down a whole bunch because let's face it, most of this game's lore feels that way, but this was on a whole separate level. Fred boys and Mang girls, it's time to talk about the Blob.
Oh yeah, that's right. This new final boss entity that was only introduced in Security Breach.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's full of so much agony from analyzing FNAF, it could probably bring its own animatronic to life. Maybe then I'd finally get a vacation. Soon, my precious, soon. So, you heard the cold open, there's a new FNAF book, there's a new FNAF teaser. But before I get to any of that, there's one topic that all of us left lingering from Security Breach. Everyone's favorite massive animatronic parts and black tentacles, the Blob. Or, as I like to call him, Freddy Spaghetti. On that note, by the way, I don't know if you're aware, but FNAF is in the process of becoming a real pizza place. Not real. Basically, they're doing the same ghost kitchen stuff that Mr. Beast did for his food company, where existing restaurants just make extra food under a different brand. I actually did a food theory explaining it all. Check it out after the video. It's actually really fascinating stuff and very relevant to the franchise now. Anyway, with a real-life Freddy's comes the need for some real-life food. And if Freddy Spaghetti is not an item on that menu, so help me, I will write a politely worded letter to their social media account and kindly request that they reconsider. Anyway, the Blob was, at the time, the mystery that no one could crack.
Then you've got the Blob as well. The Blob's just on another level of complicated.
With the Blob, there are so many animatronic bodies there that have no reason to be there. I'm gonna take a stab in the dark. I think I put Henry in the Blob.
The Blob is just the catch-all, all loose ends.
Anything we don't understand, it's in that. It's in the Blob.
But you know what? It's been half a year. I'm done just throwing all our unanswered questions into this literal landfill of a character. Today we're getting some definitive answers as to what and who this thing might actually be. And those answers are gonna do two things for us. One, they'll absolutely help clarify how we talk about this franchise moving forward, and two, they'll certainly have severe implications for the Ruin DLC that's coming out early next year. So in the event that you repress this game, and specifically this character in your memory like I did, here's the quickest of reminders. In Security Breach, if you stay past 6 AM and defeat all the other animatronics, you're able to descend down into the basement of the Pizzaplex. It's there that you discover the remains of the FNAF 6 restaurant with a big ol' hole in the middle. Try to go down that hole on your own, and you're immediately jump scared by the face of Funtime Freddy attached to a big oily tentacle. But hop into Glamrock Freddy and he protects you, saying that his friends are here and that they're angry and confused. Then, during the Afton fight, those same oily tentacles pop in from the vents, trying to capture you, or anyone, to be honest. Burn Afton enough times and you get the final cutscene where the Blob returns to drag Afton off into the ceiling to keep him in cold storage until the next game. And because this is one of only a handful of animated cutscenes in Security Breach, everyone assumes that this is the true canon ending of the game. So figuring out what this thing is meant to be must be pretty darn important, right? So I guess it's time for me to stop stalling and start theorizing. The best place to start is to understand what exactly this thing's made out of, because really, it's a who's who of FNAF history. Obviously, we see Funtime Freddy as its main face. As you're descending down through the hole, though, you can definitely make out FNAF 1's Chica. The shape of the head and the torso are a dead giveaway here. Peeking out is also FNAF 1's Bonnie. Notice the coloring of it and the lack of rosy cheeks. We also have a few random arms and legs popping out. These all match the style of FNAF 1 animatronics. Notice the 3 toes on the feet and the 3 fingers and thumb with no joints on the fingers of the hands. And that's about all that you can make out from just looking at this thing in the game. But if you extract the in-game model and look at all the other sides, you find that there's a lot more hidden here. Mangle is hanging out directly opposite Freddy's face, and if you look closely, you can also find its rib cage, arm, and 2 of its feet hanging out elsewhere. Low on one side of the Blob is the puppet's mask, except it's missing one major detail. The iconic tears are gone. That is a huge clue that we're gonna need to address. And finally, we have Circus Baby's mask, the only only one of the
wonder
animatronics to
why it
not have her eyes lit up. Again, that is a huge detail that has to be important to this thing in some way. Baby's arm is also hanging around inside this thing. We know it's definitely Baby's and not Funtime Freddy's because Baby's hands have rounded silver tips on the fingers, just like we see here. Like I said, it is a real mishmash of animatronics. It's almost like Steel Wool wanted a one-stop shop for FNAF's greatest hits. And weird details like Baby's eyes being extinguished and the puppet's missing tears feel like the game trying to tell us something, but what? Well, after identifying each and every arm and leg sticking out of this thing, there was still one animatronic in the spaghetti that really got my Matt Pat tingle going. This guy right here. Hidden away at the very bottom of the mess is a naked endoskeleton consisting of a single animatronic head, 2 arms, and a missing eye, with a body position that looks like it's desperately trying to pull itself out. His position right at the bottom also felt like he was intentionally hidden, the kind of thing that you would overlook a few times, but clearly he's meant to be important. He's the only animatronic in this mess that's missing an eye, but his other eye is illuminated, which immediately puts him on the same level as the more iconic characters that we see absorbed into this bizarre amalgamation. So, who is it? What is it? Just a random endoskeleton? No, couldn't be. But to know for sure, I had to look closer. My first instinct was that it must be Golden Freddy. I mean, looking at the roster of characters inside the blob, pretty much every major animatronic is represented in some
We're back.
some way. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Puppet, Baby, all of them are here, but Golden Freddy is strangely absent. Plus, with the animatronic only having one eye, I thought that maybe it was discreetly hinting at the fact that while the crying child's spirit was released in the good ending of FNAF 3, another spirit remained trapped in the metal. Cassidy, the vengeful spirit, still here and still angry. It felt very reminiscent of the 2 endings of FNAF 3. In case you don't recall, FNAF 3 was the first game in the series to introduce a good and bad ending. Finding all the secret minigames led you to Happiest Day, where the souls of the dead kids are put to rest and we're given a final image of unlit animatronic heads. But if you just finish the game normally, you instead get this, the bad ending. An image of those exact same masks, but each one with one eye lit up. A spirit remains in each body. Well, all of them except for Golden Freddy's mask in the background, which has 2 eyes lit. 2 eyes for 2 spirits. And in the intervening years, 1 has been released. However, despite lots of pieces thematically lining up, there was one glaring issue here. Golden Freddy doesn't have himself an endoskeleton. He's a spring-lock suit. It's why Golden Freddy is always hunched over. He has no skeleton, no frame. So if Golden Freddy's now off the table, who else could it be? Well, obviously his defining feature is that one lit eye. But it's not only that one eye is lit, it's that he's physically missing the second eye. So I sat down and went through my mind's encyclopedia of FNAF lore to remember what other characters only have one eye. Immediately I thought Foxy might make a good contender, except Foxy isn't actually missing an eye. He just has one covered up by an eye patch. Same thing for Withered Foxy. Maybe it could be Lefty, the strange black animatronic bear from FNAF 6 that was designed as a capture suit for the puppet. Nope, the eye that's missing is on the wrong side. You know what? Forget it. Maybe it is just a random endoskeleton because why not? It's security breach. But you know what? It's not that either. You see, FNAF 1 endoskeletons are canonically more boxy and streamlined, not this guy. The body in the blob is actually closer to the Endo O2 models that we see used in FNAF 2. Those have thin spring-like coils around their main skeleton. But even then, what we see in the blob is different. Notice the thick round discs that are directly connected to the skeletal structure. You don't see that in Endo O2s. It's almost like these things' arms are actually its legs. But that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, or does it? Because there is one animatronic that actually has hands connecting to leg joints. One with an Endo O2 head that's missing its right eye. One with wires hanging out the side and with 4 rounded fingers at the end of each hand. It is the Mangle. Just, you know, it's Mangle's other head. That weird guy who's just kind of hanging out over there on the body. It is a direct match. Okay, gotta be honest with you. I was excited to identify this mystery animatronic, but also, disappointed. This weird animatronic that's trying to pull itself out of the bottom of the blob feels like it should mean something special, but Mangle being the answer just feels empty. Like, we already know Mangle's in this thing. The head is very obvious on the body. So, like so much else inside of this game, it was a mystery that led to a dead end. But hey, now that we have the complete and definitive roster of who's inside this thing, we can actually start to figure out why they're inside this thing. Because these are some weird picks. When last we left everyone, we had Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby. So why do we now have older versions of these animatronics inside the blob? Also, how do we suddenly have FNAF 1 and 2 era animatronics mixed in when none of these older models were a part of FNAF 6's fire?
Can someone please just use anything other than fire to kill these things? If at first you don't succeed, try again. But at a certain point, you just gotta like cut it off and be like, you know what? Maybe there's something else. Silver bullet. steak in the heart, garlic, just literally anything.
Really?
Honestly, this was the main reason I didn't want to cover the blob. It just felt like one big continuity error. But now that I've come to the end of my sanity trying to determine what animatronic a finger belongs to, I think an answer has presented itself to me through the darkness. And you know what? I was wrong. Dead wrong. So the opening area of Security Breach is Rockstar Row, and it's full of memorabilia from the past pizzerias. You got stuff like OG Foxy's torso and jaw placed inside of display cases. There's also Bonnie's guitar, Freddy's bow tie, Chica's cupcake, even random stuff like Chica's feet or animatronic leg pieces. But it's not the items that are there that are interesting, it's the ones that are missing. If you look closely at these display cases, the majority of them have at least one missing item with a small description plaque in front of the empty space. Unfortunately, we can't see what exactly is on the plaques, but if torsos and feet are being displayed, then it isn't too hard to imagine that these could have been the heads, masks, arms, items that have been collected and added to the blob. In fact, that would explain why it's Circus Baby and Funtime Freddy heads inside of the blob instead of Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy. It's not a continuity error like all of us assumed, it's just a really obscure lore point. Remember that FNAF sister location ended with all the animatronics teamed up to form Ennard, a literal tangle of wires and eyeballs, and that was pretty much it. But once Ennard was puked up and Baby got voted out of the team, that tangle of wires needed shape and form. This in turn gave rise to Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, creatures created from literal trash, not official versions of the characters, for as much as they might look like the original characters. As far as Fazbear Entertainment memorabilia is concerned, the Circus Baby mask and Funtime Freddy head, they're the latest versions of those characters. They're put on display for fans of the series to see. Parts that this tangle of black goo could steal from the displays and absorb into its own being. Same with the OG suits and Mangle Body. Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, meanwhile, they're unofficial characters. They were never created by Fazbear Entertainment or displayed inside of a pizzeria. In short, I'm sorry, Steel Wool. I'm not sorry about a lot of the things I've said about some of the lore decisions in this game, but in this individual case, I'm sorry that I assumed that this was just a sloppy continuity error when in actuality, it was a lot more thoughtful than I could have ever expected. We just didn't give you enough benefit of the doubt here. So, like an overeager Funko Pop collector, there's a tangle of black wires lurking in the Pizzaplex hunting for souvenirs from the franchise. And believe it or not, this actually lines up with a random detail from the story New Kid in the third Fazbear Frights book. As a group of kids are exploring an abandoned Freddy's restaurant, we get this line, quote, "While they were in the bathroom, Devin was pretty sure he heard something slithering through the walls. He didn't say anything. From the way the other boys' faces paled, he knew they heard it too." That is the line, and it never pays off. Not in this story, not in this book, not in the entire book series. The whole story actually winds up being a Golden Freddy story, strangely enough, but it leaves Chekhov's tentacle monster just sitting there in the walls waiting to be used, probably because it was meant to pay off in Security Breach, a game that was originally meant to release closer to that story's publication, but the repeated delays in Security Breach threw all of that synergistic programming off. Alright, so we know why.
And we're back.
It physically looks the way it does, but really, what are these tentacles? Well, that's where the puppet mask Missing Tears comes in. I think we're all familiar with this thing's story, right? In the aftermath of kids getting killed at Freddy's restaurants, the creator, Henry, institutes a security program in the form of the puppet. In FNAF 6, we literally see this thing called Security Puppet. Sadly, Henry's daughter Charlie is killed outside of the confines of the restaurant. The puppet finds her too late and lies down beside her in the rain, and the two become one. And in FNAF 6, the last official time that we see this character, it comes complete with tears in its eyes. In fact, in every iteration of the character, the puppet mask has tears. Or should I say almost every iteration. Look at the security puppet minigame from before Charlie's death. The mask has no tears. It's only after Charlie dies and the thing is possessed that tears suddenly form on the mask. Tears mean that Charlie's soul is inside of this thing. But now, there are no tears left on the mask because Charlie's soul has been released. She's no longer inside Security Puppet. When Henry burned everything at the end of FNAF 6, it worked. Kinda. It freed all the souls that were trapped inside of the metal. This coincides with what we see on the blueprints for Remnant. Overheating might neutralize the effects permanently. However, it didn't work all the way. There's one thing that Henry's fire didn't account for. Something that it didn't purge: agony. You see, Remnant's soul metal might be the focus of the games, but it isn't the only powerful force that drives this franchise forward. The other is actually found within the pages of the Fazbear Frights books. agony. Now, it's important to distinguish the difference between agony and remnant. I've seen a lot of places using the terms interchangeably, but in Fazbear Frights, they're explained to be distinctly different. Remnant is all about the soul. When an animatronic becomes possessed, that spirit literally becomes attached to the metal. That metal can then be melted down into a substance that Fazbear Frights describes as a boiling liquid mercury, aka remnant. If you inject that metal into other animatronics, it suddenly brings them to life using the power of the original souls. Compare that to agony. In the books, agony is studied by Dr. Phineas Taggart. He states that agony, quote, has a greater energetic radius and power than any other emotion. I've done numerous experiments to measure, capture, contain, and study the leftover emotion embedded into objects that were near a tragedy. The book even goes so far to explain that the items Phineas has collected weren't possessed by ghosts or spirits, but instead were energized by agony. So when someone feels agony, it doesn't just stay with them, it can infect inanimate objects around them and linger there. In other words, while those original animatronics no longer have spirits powering them, the agony they felt while being murdered remains attached to the suits. That's why the Blob's interested in collecting the suits. It's not collecting spirits, it's collecting agony. By combining them, it becomes more powerful. All the pain and suffering of the children from over the years brought together to create one giant monster. That's why the eyes are glowing red for all the animatronics and endoskeletons. It's also why the puppet and baby aren't glowing. The puppet has been put to rest by her father. She's no longer tormented.
My daughter, if you can hear me, it's time to rest. For you and for those you have carried in your arms.
And baby, well, yeah, she is certainly angry. She is jealous, but she's also eager to please her father even after death.
Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy.
She embraces the monster that she's become. She's not filled with agony, but everyone else? Absolutely. Even in that finale speech, we hear Henry say it.
This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should.
Agony! Woo, woo, he did it! He said the word! So, there you have it, friends. Over half a year after the game's release, we finally solved the last mystery of Security Breach. The Blob isn't a giant continuity breaker, it's just a very cleverly composed amalgamation of animatronic parts slithering through the walls looking to accumulate agony. The tortured emotions coming from all the old animatronics on display throughout the Pizzaplex. And now that we've solved it, not convinced that we've seen the last of it. Despite the fact that the Afton ending's only worth 2 stars, when the highest is 3, the DLC poster does seem to indicate that the story is going to follow this particular ending. Notice the melted parts of Chica's face, the ruined Pizzaplex, which directly follows the building collapse and Afton's ending. But look a little closer. There are mysterious red eyes up in the top left, as well as some suspicious-looking cables down in the bottom right. Even if the Blob did finally kill Afton during the ending, the agony would still remain. It perseveres beyond death, and it isn't able to simply let go. In short, the Blob is still very much a threat, something that is more powerful than anything we've ever faced in the franchise. In fact, maybe my previous prediction about the Afton amalgamation could still come to pass. As I called out in a previous theory, in the books, Afton gets mixed up with a bunch of agony, which creates a giant monster trash rabbit. And isn't that exactly what we're seeing in the ending of Security Breach? Afton mixed in with a bunch of agony parts. I suspect that Afton may be able to take control of this thing, overriding the Blob's directionless rage and focusing it in order to wreak havoc on Gregory and whoever this new character might be, just like he does during the Stitch Wraith stories from Fazbear Frights. The only issue is, I'm not sure how we'd be able to stop it. In Fazbear Frights, the solution is to see into people's memories and trap them inside those memories. It's a pretty random power, so it's hard to say how that might work in the games. Unless, of course, this new character is meant to be someone that could remind Afton or the Blob of good memories, bringing them back to reality and quelling the agony within. But that, my friends, is a theory for another day. So in the meantime, remember, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
Well, I have to say, everyone, that was a very interesting theory, a lot to think about and consider, but I have to say for now, that is the end of today's video. So, I want you all to remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Down in the description will be a link to the original video, so remember to support the original creator and all they do, and I'll see all of you folks next time. Peace out.